But when it comes to my wildlife photography, it's all about the pen and ink illustration that I did as a teenager. When I was about 11 or 12, I'm not quite sure which, I met a relatively famous artist, certainly regionally famous artist, and I don't know his name offhand, but he presented me a blank piece of paper, and I had happened to carry, I always had art supplies with me, and that particular day I had my pen and ink, my ink bottle and my little nib, and I presented it to him, and he proceeded to show me how to lay ink on a piece of white paper. And he said, it's all in how little ink you lay down with how much you say with that little bit of ink.
Yes.
And that resonated with me. It's not like it's the wisest thing anyone's ever said to me, but it's one of the few things that actually made sense. And that translates all the way down the road to what you see in my work today, which is how little can you lay on that paper?
Yes. In fact, you have an example here, so if you would hold that up.
Well, this is not the best example because there's a lot of ink on it.
This has a little more ink on it, but the aspect of...
But white, the celebration of paper is something that I still to this day relish. It was so hard to come across paper as a child in a household where I wasn't encouraged to be an artist, certainly to study art. I am still absolutely fascinated by paper, and as a result, it is part of my art. And if you go into studying it even further and further, which is the line of sight where light strikes the paper and comes up through the ink, and other factors as you study the science of color, not in this particular case because the light is absolutely being absorbed by the ink, but paper plays such a crucial role in the life of an artist that those illustrative days definitely play a big role in what I do in my wildlife work.
Well, I think that carries over also into photography. I know in my background related to what papers I really want to print photography on, and you've chosen some very high quality papers to use because of how it affects your work. But I want to point out, when you talked about how much ink you're going to put on there, you have a lot of white area in your prints, and you use it very effectively. Talk a little bit about paper and how you decided what paper should represent your artwork, because I consider it certainly as artwork.
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's start with the word white. The fact that I can achieve so much white is rooted in the fact that I shoot infrared, and so just let's get that fact out of the way. The fact that infrared sees green as white is pretty much getting me into the ballpark in terms of being able to have white in the first place. Because had this been ordinary black and white work, a lot of this would be grey, and so having your greens and your grasses and your leaves and other things go white automatically, it really goes a long way to helping. So you can see there's a...
There you go, right there.
There's a beautiful tuft of grass over there that's absolutely pure white. I did not make that white, it was already white. And it's part of the signature of my style is to embrace white. And so that's how I get the white. The next thing is to realize that that brilliance is not the only story, because a brilliant white paper will fade with time, especially if it's been bleached. So what you want is a beautiful white that won't fade or yellow with time. So I use very high quality papers, 100% cotton, archival. The brand I'm using the brand I use, and I don't mind bragging about, is Canson Infinity Papers. It more than gives you a brilliant surface, it gives you a tactile feeling both in weight and texture. So very often when a person purchases a good piece of artwork, they actually purchase the print, not the framed picture. And so the fact that when they hold my work, it exudes value on a tactile level that more women will understand when I'm talking about than men, but it makes a huge difference. So it's a psychological as well as technical as well as branding decision, because in addition to what quality is and how long it lives, is also consistency. I have a long career ahead of me, and so the papers I'm using today when I come 20 years from now and someone says, so which edition did you get of Graham Hobart's work? They're not going to say, oh, the edition that went yellow. They're going to, because the one thing that's going to be consistent in my branding is that my career is marked by excellence from the beginning all the way to the end. And so I work with very, very good papers. This paper company's been around for 400 years, so they've learned the art of consistency.
Yes, it's interesting, even before I had met you, and then when I met you at your presentation, then you talked about Canson. That was the papers I've been using all along.